Welcome back to another episode of With Love Mama, the podcast. I'm Tanika, but before we dive into today's episode, I just want to say a huge thank you for being here. This podcast was created to feel like a safe space where women can exhale, feel seen, feel informed, and feel a little less alone in whatever season they're moving through. So if the conversations that we've had have supported you in any way, one of the most beautiful ways that you can support the show is by subscribing, leaving a rating, or sharing an episode with another woman who needs to hear it too. It genuinely helps our podcast to grow and reach more women navigating preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and beyond. So let's get into today's episode. Welcome to another episode of With Love Mama, the podcast. Today we have a beautiful birth story guest, Danielle, here to share her positive birth story with a little bit of a complication at the end. But we were just saying off air how it doesn't matter the experience, it's how your mindset actually defines your experience. So welcoming Danielle.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
Feeling very excited.
Amazing. So let's just jump straight in and go back to the very beginning. You went into spontaneous labor at 39 and 1. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. How did that feel in your body and mind?
Look, coming towards the end of my pregnancy, I definitely felt prepared. I had really educated myself on all things labor. So, like, what was to happen. I also was very lucky that my sister has 4 kids who I was able to be there for their birth. So I had that firsthand experience as well. But also for myself, being a first-time mom, I wanted to really broaden my horizons and educate myself on all things cause and effect, particularly in labor. I wanted a real natural, spontaneous labor. I wanted minimal intervention. So I made sure I really educated myself on if there was intervention, what was the effect of that and what could possibly happen. So I feel like going in towards the end of my pregnancy, I was really calm and just ready to tackle it when it came. When it did come, I was very, I just told myself, I was like, no, this is not it. Like, I didn't think it was it because, you know, you hear first time moms, they always go over. So I was like, I'm 39 and 1. Like, this isn't labor. So it was a Saturday, it was middle of the day, and I started getting real tightenings in my stomach. They weren't painful. And that morning I had gone to the bathroom. I had some like brown discharge. I had already lost my mucus plug. So I had spoken to my sister and she's like, look, I think this is it. And I was like, okay, we'll see what happens. And the day went on. I headed to my mom's house with my sister and her kids. We were setting up a Christmas tree. And they started getting a lot stronger and they weren't painful, but they were very noticeable. And I was like, oh, no, these are just Braxton Hicks. I just kept telling myself that.
I really think the gaslighting of yourself is like such a strategy as well. Because
Yeah,
if you lean into it and you start going like, oh my gosh, like this is happening, like what do I do? And you start going into that
panic.
mindset, it just like you put yourself on a timeline, you're freaking out. Whereas if you're just kind of like subtly gaslighting yourself, like, oh no, like I'm actually okay.
Yeah,
It just
that's definitely what I was doing. And because they weren't painful, I was like, no, I don't think this is it. Like, you've all told me contractions are painful. But then, like, I would have to stop because they were just getting so tight. And came to 8 o'clock, we had dinner, I went home. The minute I got home, they turned painful. It was like, I'm in my safe space. This is where I need to progress. And they started getting painful. So it was like 8 o'clock at night. So I jumped in the shower, had a warm shower, jumped out, and I was just sort of hanging in the lounge room on my birth ball, you know, just getting comfortable. And I didn't start timing them till about maybe 10 o'clock. And at about 9:30, I put my TENS machine on. I put it on really early. And I really used that. I pretty much used that my whole entire time, besides when I was in the shower. And that was a lifesaver for me.
That's so great for you to mention because I know in my experience and many mums that I have had on the podcast, a lot of the time we reach for the TENS machine too late and then it doesn't
Yes,
really work. So that's great. You were like, no, I'm going to give this a go. And then you were able to continue using it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Because what I found was obviously I started on very low and I was able to really max it out. Like I
good.
don't even think I got to the top top tier of it, but I really utilized that. And I think that because obviously it was overnight, I think that gave me a lot more energy
Yeah.
because I wasn't drained so much from the beginning, that early stage.
Mm.
So I sort of just progressed at home. I moved around a lot. Like I was using the lounge, I was kneeling on the lounge, hanging over it. I was, had pillow forts in the lounge room. I had everything. I was in and out of the shower.
Were you just following what your body was like asking?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I really surrendered. And that was like I think my best advice was really surrender to it because at the end of the day, our bodies know what they're doing. And I just had to let my body do what it needed to do. And for
I
me,
think
it was
that
challenging.
that piece around surrender, it can be like for a first time mom as well. It can be like, how do you even do it? But it's just like that is like the ultimate piece of advice. It is
Yeah,
the ultimate piece. It's just like connecting in, like what you said, just following what your body wanted, doing what
absolutely.
feels safe for you. Like that is all surrender instead of like, you know, if there's, for example, your body's asking you to get on all fours and you're going, oh, that's a bit weird. I won't do that. Like that's not surrendering.
Exactly. Yeah, you've just got,
Yeah.
and just try it.
Yeah.
Like try different things. Like I found that like on my hands and knees, I was more comfortable. I found, really using my upper body leaning, on the top of the lounge was really comfortable for me.
Mhm.
Having those pillows stacked under my stomach, I found was really helpful. I didn't like the feeling of my stomach hanging. So
Mm.
my partner was often, holding that so that I didn't have that gravity of it falling forward. And that's just what I felt comfortable with. Um, but yeah, that was my best thing. And as you said, first time moms, you're like, what do you mean surrender? Like you have no idea what that is. But in that moment, your body knows, and you just have to let go and be comfortable and try different things. Like if something's not right, like there were definitely positions that I didn't find comfortable, and I just got out of them.
Yeah. And then, so you labored at home for like most of your labor, pretty well all of it, really. And
Yeah.
then you mentioned you were in the MGP program. So how did that feel when you actually got to the hospital, like entered the birthing suite, had your team there? Did it that shift in environments?
So my so I was in MGP, but my midwife that I had seen my whole pregnancy was actually not on the night when I went into labor, which was fine because I also had an incredible midwife who was in the group that I had already met. And she was the one who my sister had called at 3 o'clock in the morning, and just spoke with her and was like, look, like she's progressing well. And she was really amazing. Like she really grounded me and she was like, stay at home as long as you can. Like you can do this. Like she's really supportive, and that was really nice and reassuring because my husband, and my sister at home with me was so supportive, but hearing it from that medical side was really nice as well.
Like
Um,
validation as well, that like it's
yeah,
all good, everything's just running smoothly,
exactly.
doing the right
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
And so then I was like, yeah, I can stay home for a little bit longer. And then it got to 4 o'clock. Everything kicked off. I started vomiting. And I was like, I think it's time to head in.
Hmm.
So we called her. She was like, yeah, perfect. We'll meet you in there. And when we got in there, it was 4:30 and we met her in there and she was just so loving. Like it was just such like open arms, like I think birth is so beautiful, but there also is that side of like panic, like, and for me, I was, in a lot of pain. I was really at the end of it. And she was just like, you're doing amazing. Like, you're doing all the things that you need to be doing. Like, look how far you've come.
That like motherly holding of like a
Yes,
midwife or doula, if you can have that, I feel like especially when it's like even external of like your like sister or your own mom. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it hits so different.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just that, yeah, it's just that maternal, motherly female energy that is like, you can do this. And so we got into the room, got set up, popped my music on, had my birth playlist. She started running the bath, and I was just sort of jumping on the ball, not jumping, but sitting, bouncing on the ball in the room. And she was obviously came over for a chat, and she was like, "Do you want me to check you, see how dilated you are?" And I had asked no, I didn't want to be checked because I know myself that I'm a very mental kind of person. And if you were to tell me that I was 2 centimeters dilated, I probably then would have panicked. And I was like, I don't want to know because I know that things can go from 0 to 100 so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had declined any cervical checks. And I was like, I just want to continue laboring. I know I'm near. Like, I know that this is, coming along soon. So I ended up in the shower for a fair bit, took the tens off, was in the shower, had one head on the front, husband held one on the back. So I found that my most comfortable towards the end. So I sat in the shower, and then at 10 to 6, I looked at my sister and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And that was one thing that I told myself, that I can do it. And I didn't want to say I can't do it. I always told myself I want to be like, I don't want to do this. And then I looked at her and I was like, I can't do this. And I was like, oh, no, like, I didn't want to do this. Like, this is not how I wanted myself to talk to myself.
Were you aware of like the phases of labor when you went into it, knowing that that is a sign of transition?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to be checked. I
Yeah.
was like, I have to be checked. So I got the midwife and I was like, please check me. I need to know. And she was like, okay. And so she laid me down and she was like, all right, you're 7 centimeters. And I was like, okay, we're good. Like, I can do it. It's fine. And then I jumped back in the shower. And then minutes later, it was like 5 to 6. And I just screamed. And I was very, very vocal during my labor. Like, I was a roarer, I was loud. And I screamed. I was like, I need a poo.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at my sister and I was like, oh my God, like, it's happening. Like, I remember this. And you hear it all the time, that pressure. And I was like, I've got to get in the bath. I want to get in the bath. And obviously, my midwife was so lovely. She was like, just be prepared. The bath can slow things down. I was like, that's fine. I need to get in.
Mm-hmm.
And I jumped in the bath, and my next contraction, I needed to started pushing. And I was like, something's out. And she was like, it's probably the head, you can feel it. And I reached down and I was like, that's not the head. Anyway, it was my waters. So my waters were bulging. They hadn't broken yet.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, like, that's the membranes, blah, blah. And then my next contraction, I pushed again. Her head came out and burst the waters.
Mm-hmm.
And then my third contraction, I birthed her fully. And that's when it all went a little bit crazy. Like, it was so beautiful and, like that out of world experience. But I think in myself, my body just took over. My body just literally was like, get this baby out. And because, I think there's so much education around your breathing and remaining calm with your pushing and everything like that. But I physically could not do that. Like, my body just absolutely took over.
Isn't that so like amazing though that your body actually has the capability? Like we do all this mindset work, and yes, your mind is a huge part of it, but just as you're saying, you actually had to surrender to what your body was wanting and
Absolutely.
needing, and you had no control over that. Your body just did. Your body birthed your baby
My
girl.
body knew it had to come out. Yeah.
So did you realize instantly that things had shifted? Like, there was a bit of a unexpected event occurring, or were you kind of like not, it didn't hit you straight away?
No, so I was sort of in shock at first, like, I had lifted up the baby, and it was all like my cord was still down in the water, but the water had turned red instantly.
Okay.
So my midwife had got my sister to click the emergency button. She was right next to it. All this was happening. I had no idea. And so she's clicked the emergency button and she's looked at me. She's like, we need to get you out of the bath. And I sort of just jumped up, like nothing had happened. I just jumped up, like I think my body was just in shock. I knew I needed to get out of there. And so I jumped up and she's helped me step out of the bath, and I've sat on the bed. And as I've walked out, there's just like a room full of like 10 nurses for baby and me. And I've walked out and I've sat on the bed and she's just taking baby. And she was like, I've got to take her. So she's taken her. And obviously I don't know what's going on at this point. I was just like, yeah, that's what needs to be done. And I was laying there and the nurses came over to me. They're like, okay, we need to check you've got your placentas inside. So they just were trying to see for the cord. And so they tried to reach, and obviously I was screaming. They couldn't get it because there was no cord at all.
How did this all feel for you? Like, even in reflection, I guess in the moment you described shock, but in reflection of that afterbirth experience when your whole birth was quite calm and quite, you were very intuitive with your body, having this unexpected turn, how does that feel reflecting on it?
I think obviously for me, it was quite sad because I didn't get that initial connection,
Mm.
and I didn't have that till hours after. And that's something that I've spoken about a lot, like with my partner and family, because I think with a birth, you just see such a beautiful moment of having a baby and then sitting in that moment with your baby, and you're their safe place. And I couldn't be her safe place. And that's like, it still breaks me now that I wasn't able to be there for her. But at the same time, it was what needed to be done. And I had to, and I'm okay with what had happened, because if there was no intervention there, I probably wouldn't have my baby, and it would be a very different outcome.
Of course. And do you think that interrupted, like you didn't get your golden hour, didn't get that time with her? Do you think that impacted your postpartum experience?
Um, I think my stay in the hospital was very much like a safe bubble, right?
Mhm.
And then the minute I got home, I feel like it all hit me. And that was my reality of, I just sat with my thoughts and I kept thinking, like I never got that. Like it was pulled from me, having those moments, those first latches, like her first feed being from me, whereas I was in recovery and my midwife had to come in and express my colostrum and go feed her from there, and I'm so I'm so blessed, saying this, because I know a lot of people have it a lot harder, but I find that I sat with myself a lot and I kicked myself a lot for it, but then I was okay because I came around and I was like, no, like there's nothing I could have done different.
Yeah.
I had the most beautiful labor that I wanted. I had, my unmedicated natural birth. There was nothing that I could have done. We didn't know that her cord was so short. Like some things are absolutely out of your control. And then when I sort of sat with myself with those thoughts and told myself that, I saw it as a completely different thing.
Yeah. That is so beautiful and so wise to acknowledge that, yes, there was the feelings of like grief and of almost like loss of that moment and that time and that
Yeah,
connection, and the does you had something that you envisioned it a certain way and it didn't go that way, but then shifting the mindset, instead of almost being a victim to what did happen that was out of your control and making that mean something about you as a mum, you've instead seen it as, well, I have my baby girl. She's here. I had a beautiful birth, a beautiful labor. And focusing on that is such a grounded and healed perspective, and so, so beautiful. And I think so great and empowering for so many mums to listen to, because, yeah, it didn't go to plan, but it can still be an incredible experience.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Is there anything that you would love to sort of mention for a mum going into birth with like, say, a rigid plan? Just like anything else that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, I wasn't one to have a plan,
Hmm.
um, but I had a pathway I wanted to follow instead of a plan, right? I wanted my minimal intervention, stuff like that. But I also, and I'm so glad I did, I had prepared my husband for the worst case scenario.
Mm.
And how many times I told him worst case scenario? I said, if anything happens and I am taken from the baby and something needs to happen, please stay with her. I'm like, because I have been her safe place and she knows me and I'm not there. So
Yeah.
you need to be there for her. Um, and I was like, but it'll never happen. It'll never happen, don't worry.
Mm.
And I think that was another thing for me because I was like, oh my God, I got the worst case scenario in like, so that sort of shot me in the foot. But I think having those conversations and being aware that these things can happen, it's not even be ready for it, but just know what you want in that case.
Mm.
Because I think as a mother and you well yeah, I think as a mother you would want your baby to be cared for by someone you know if you can't be there. And it is worst case scenario, but I think you've got to have tough conversations about what could possibly happen
Yeah.
and preparing yourself. And I think that was really sweet because when I woke up in recovery, I was obviously on my own and I was questioning what had happened to my baby. And then I was finally able to have him in and see me. And when I was with him, I was like, is she okay? You know, like she's been on her own. And he's like, no, she hasn't been on her own. Like she's okay. And I think, yeah, my best advice would be to have the tough conversations before. And it's not negative and it's not a bad thing, but it's just opening up all the different doors that can happen. Even if you want to have, you know, well, you can have the most beautiful experience. Like
Mm.
I still say, I had the most beautiful experience.
Yeah, and I think that's the power of informed choice in the
Yes.
entire journey of you you prepared yourself, you prepared your husband in knowing that birth is so unpredictable. We can't go into it and go, it's going to go exactly this way
Yeah,
and tick all these boxes and we're done. And we walk out 6 hours later and everything's perfect. Everything's fine.
exactly. Yeah,
Because there's just always different things that present themselves in such
exactly.
a uncontrollable
Exactly.
experience. So I really love how throughout this entire episode, you have really been like coming back to you informed yourself. You were so informed. You knew the different ways that it could potentially go. And I really think that is a huge piece, especially when I'm working with women in the, preparing for birth. It's
Yes.
a huge thing. We don't want to go in with a rigid plan. Just as you said, it's a path, it's a map, it's a compass, it's something to guide.
Yeah. And maps
And
are really good idea because you can go many different ways. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
great way to put it.
and then you can actually never feel disappointed, never feel like a failure, but understand it's just gone. Like you said, you had all these doors open and you just simply had to step through one of them. Wasn't
Exactly.
wasn't your first pick,
Yeah.
but you still
But I
feel really
still got
proud of
the
it.
outcome I wanted.
Yeah.
I just had to go through a couple of hills on the way. And
Yeah.
my next birth will probably be completely different. And that's so fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I feel like that has just been such an incredible conversation, so empowering, and really that underlying message, like I just said, you've had the whole time is the more informed you are, the more confident you feel, the better you can surrender,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to spiral in and impact your postpartum journey. Like you said, you had your process around it, but you very quickly came to, I actually really enjoyed that aside
Yeah.
from, yeah.